I think digital has always been important for business. Now more than ever, what's becoming very clear is this has gone from being something that's important to something that's existential. How do you support customers to make orders entirely online when your stores are closed? How do you create mashups with other partners to be able to facilitate deliveries when your own deliveries don't suffice? How do you try to create experiences online through self-service that minimize the impact of people calling your call centers? All of these things are things clients are facing on a regular basis. And most CEOs I'm in conversation with are acknowledging the fact that this has now got to be a priority that they have to be ready for more so than they'd ever thought before.
Right. What are companies then essentially doing? It's all well and good to say this is what you need to do, but essentially putting in a number of those things into practice is a completely different story.
Absolutely. And I think, look, there's three things happening here in terms of transformation that we've typically always talked about. The first is the change in human behavior, right? I think there's recognizable shift now. We're seeing significant accounts of over 70s, for example, ordering from retail, ramping that up. We're seeing a big shift in institutions like schools, which historically had not thought about transformation as particularly applicable to them, and educational institutions. We're also seeing a shift in industries like leisure, basically saying, are there virtual experiences that we can create if physical experiences are essentially restricted and people can't use them? And so, three things: the human behavior shift is translating to big investments in technology and technology platforms that enable this. And then lastly, new business models. I think there's real recognition that digitization and transformation is not doing what you used to do in the physical world and digitizing that or translating that. It is essentially the journey of how do you go from being a caterpillar to a butterfly, real transformation. So asking yourself the question, how do you reimagine yourself in the context of a world that now is entirely digital? Customers are thinking very actively about how they actually create products and services that essentially create value for customers entirely digitally. And there's plenty of examples in this, from telemedicine to in
Right.
the educational space, new courses coming online, which can scale faster than traditional courses limited by a classroom and a professor.
Right. And how do companies manage, for example, confidential and sensitive conversations over some of these online video company technology like Zoom? Because you take Zoom, which has had an unbelievably massive growth spurt, 2.2 million new monthly users. It probably didn't expect that kind of growth, but the security has to also keep up with it. How do the companies manage the security side of things in the new environment?
I think that's a great question, Mandy, because I think what you're seeing now is things like security, resilience, scalability, all things that in the technology world were taken for granted because people could model loads and expectations for how people were using them in their own environments, protected by VPNs and what have you. And now you have not our company has gone from having 53 offices around the world to 20,000. And as we look at our own security and the way in which we're working, it's testing our teams to make sure that we have every single employee rethink the approach to confidentiality and security in the context of this new environment. Because Zoom's a great example. So what conversations are you actually having on Zoom in an open forum versus things that you're actually doing on a private network, and tools that are essentially built for communication within your own employees? I think these kinds of distinctions were historically not huge challenges, but are now increasingly right at the forefront of how companies are getting to with this.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.